Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramesh Subramaniam. I'm the Director General of the Southeast Asia Department. On behalf of ADB, we are delighted to welcome all of you to this session on financing green recovery for a low-carbon and climate-resilient Southeast Asia. At the outset, I wish to thank immensely the UK government, particularly the FCDO, and the Green Climate Fund for co-hosting this event with us, and Excellency Minister Cleverly. Also, this is the first occasion for us to see you. Huge event. So thank you so much for the entire COP26. Due to COVID restrictions, we are organizing this event in a hybrid format. Speakers participating here in person, as well as we have video messages. So, and because also of the logistics constraints, we will do this in two parts. We will first begin with President Masa Asakawa, then followed by Minister Cleverly, then Ibu Sri Mulyani, Minister of Finance of Indonesia, then the GCF head, Mr. Jannik. Then we will go for the second part. But I wanted to give you a quick intro to what this session is all about. We will hear how partners support from development partners support can be leveraged in innovative ways to catalyze financing for NDCs and green recovery efforts, in this case particularly focused on Southeast Asia. Of course, what we are talking today can also be replicated in other parts of the world. We will also hear announcements of support for an Asean Green Recovery Platform, or GRP, which is linked to the ADB-managed and ASEAN countries and ADB-owned ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, or ACGF, which is part of the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund. ACGF, thanks to Indonesia, Malaysia, and a number of all the other ASEAN countries, it's a truly unique regional cooperation efforts and brings all Southeast Asian countries together to promote green finance. Since 2021, ACGF has become the anchor of the regional effort to promote green recovery, perhaps the first such green recovery initiative in the region. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers today, beginning with President Masa Asakawa of ADB. Then we have Minister James Cleverly, Minister of State at the FCDO, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office of the UK. Following that, Minister Sri Mulyani Indravati, who is also ADB's governor for Indonesia, Minister of Finance, and Minister Arifin Tasrif, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources. And we have, of course, the Green Climate Fund Executive Director, Jannik Glomeric, and we are also awaiting Remy Rio, the CEO of AFD, who will be joining us. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to request President Masa Asakawa to share opening remarks. President Masa, please.
Yes, thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to begin by extending my deep, deep appreciation to Minister Sri Mulyani Indravati, Minister Arifin Tasrif, Minister Grace Hu, Deputy Secretary General Zaminda Singh for their support today. I also would like to thank our partners, the Right Honorable James Cleverly, Executive Director Jannik Glomeric, Chief Executive Officer Remy Rio, Chief Executive Officer and General Manager Dario Scannapieco, and Director General Con Dons. We meet today because of our shared commitment to promote a green recovery in ASEAN. I am encouraged that your ongoing efforts and pledges of support will help to turn the tide of this climate crisis. Well, let me briefly discuss with you why our work together to secure robust financing for green recovery in ASEAN is so vital. ADB views this work as a key component of our overall commitment to take bold and urgent action against climate change. As I announced, you may know this, but I announced last month we are raising our ambition to deliver 100 billion US dollars in cumulative climate financing between 2019 and 2030, including $34 billion in cumulative adaptation and resilience investments. So the remaining 66 is for mitigation. We have also updated our energy policy, which is very old, very outdated, to formally withdraw from financing new coal-fired power generation and support the development of sustainable and resilient energy systems in line with the Paris Agreement. And tomorrow morning, we will launch our Energy Transition Mechanism, ETM partnership, which will use the blended finances to accelerate the retirement of or repurposing of existing coal-fired power plants. So, my friends, as you know well, Southeast Asia is one of the most vulnerable regions in the world to climate impacts. The changing climate has affected our communities' infrastructure, food security, and the well-being of our people. Amid these unfortunate developments, we face a unique window of opportunity to promote a greener and more inclusive future by investing smartly in ASEAN's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. To get us on this brighter path, we need ambitious climate projects to be scaled up to meet national determined contributions NDCs. We also need to address the key challenges of financing. ADB estimates that developing Asia needs $1.7 trillion US dollars per year to support climate resilient infrastructure. ASEAN countries alone need 210 billion US dollars per year, but they currently face an estimated funding gap of over 100 billion per year. Countries also face heavy physical space constraints, of course, due to huge expenditures related to the pandemic. So, to bridge this huge infrastructure funding gap, it is clear that private investment needs to be scaled up. Let me briefly mention how ADB is addressing this important need through the ASEAN Green Recovery Platform. The platform brings together partners to invest alongside ADB's own financing. With pledges of 665 million US dollars from the UK government, thank you, the Green Climate Fund, the European Union, the Caisse Depositi a Prestiti, the Green Recovery Platform. The Green Recovery Platform will de-risk investments and catalyze 7 billion in public and private capital for green infrastructure projects. So leverage is about 10 times. It will also provide technical assistance to improve the bankability of investments, build a robust project pipeline for the region, and support the development of green capital markets. The Green Recovery Platform will be linked to the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, ACGF, and the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund, which is a regional vehicle owned by ASEAN governments and ADB, and managed by ADB. Partnerships under this platform, new platform, will complement the $1.4 billion in co-financing that has already been pledged towards the ACGF by ASEAN governments. ADB, Agence Française de Développement, the European Investment Bank, KfW, and the government of Korea also contributed. Let me close by saying that ADB looks forward to working with our partner governments, the private sector, and all stakeholders as the climate bank for Asia and the Pacific. I look forward to you hearing your views about how we can make our shared vision of a swift and green recovery a reality in ASEAN. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, President Massa, for sharing those perspectives as well as announcing the launch of the Green Recovery Platform. May I now request His Excellency Minister James Cleverly, please. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. ASEAN countries are reaching new heights of economic growth, and it's an incredibly exciting time for us to work together. But as we celebrate those highs, we must make sure they don't come with the traditional lows of the past. That is pollution, habitat loss, and rising greenhouse gas emissions. The need to invest in green infrastructure has never been stronger. And as we rebuild from this devastating pandemic, we must make sure that we do so sustainably. And now is our window of opportunity. The ambition shown to catalyze $7 billion for a green recovery across ASEAN is truly remarkable. And I pay tribute to the Asian Development Bank and regional governments for their vital support through the Green Recovery Fund and the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility. The UK's relationship with ASEAN is key to delivering our shared ambitions for a cleaner, greener future. That's why I'm pleased to announce that we will provide up to £110 million to support a green recovery by establishing the UK ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility. Now that is a mouthful. This will be a new source of lending to ASEAN governments and a source of technical expertise, including from the UK. Legal expertise will be targeted at removing legal bottlenecks, preventing investment in green technology, as well as funding new green recovery strategies. It will finance projects from wind farms to electric buses and cars. It was only a few months ago that the UK became ASEAN's first new dialogue partner in 25 years. And that was a landmark moment for our tilt towards the Indo-Pacific. We are deepening our ties with the region all the time on green projects, security cooperation, tech and science partnerships, and on international law. Our support for the UK ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, it's still a mouthful, isn't it, is yet another demonstration of our long-term commitment to working in partnership. And that must also include partnerships with the private sector to support green infrastructure. With public budgets under severe strain due to the impact of the pandemic, we must find innovative ways to bridge the gap via private finance. This is a key focus for the UK. As the first major economy to pass a target of net zero by 2050 into law, our support for Green Finance Facility will assist ASEAN governments to partner with the private sector. It will bring opportunities to collaborate and share UK expertise on green technologies. And the City of London will be an important source of financing for green infrastructure. There will be a new partnership with the London Stock Exchange to issue new green bonds under the new initiative. There is so much that we can do together. The UK will keep building the links between our countries as we work together to deliver on our Paris Agreement commitments. And I thank you all for representing ASEAN today, for your valued support and collaboration. And we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder as we address these issues of such profound importance to us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Excellency, cleverly for sharing those perspectives as well as for your support for the ASEAN countries through ADB. Thank you very much. May I now request Her Excellency Minister Dr. Srimalyani Indravati, please. Minister.
Thank you, Ramesh. President Asakawa, Minister for ASEAN at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, UK, the Executive Director of Green Climate Fund, Pak Arifin Trasif, my colleague Minister, and honorable ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure for me to be here to also participate in the launching of the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility. I think this is one of the very important and attractive initiative which is initiated by both ADB working together with other bilateral donor. Let me share you how the climate change is actually a threat, a real threat for the ASEAN economy. Climate change, it's become a spotlight and serious priority agenda for the region. This agenda, we are all recognize, require a huge financing as well as technology. Climate change is a common threat and would become an intergenerational issue or problem, and the impact will create a setback for many of the progress which is now being made. Indonesia, as the biggest country in the ASEAN region, also suffer from this climate change. Flood, drought, as well as the rising sea level is definitely threatening the life and livelihood. As much as we are all aware, the Southeast Asia has the capability as the fastest developing region, but in fact also a region that also exposed physically to the climate risk. In addition to the COVID-19, which is currently still an issue that we are all need to deal with, and that's definitely also require a huge public sources to deal with to recover the economy, as well as addressing the issue of health. Climate hazard is definitely also the top priority for all of us. ASEAN countries pay attention to this threat. And in the context of the post-pandemic recovery, a sustainable growth is definitely need to be designed. In this case, we are very pleased to see the initiative by the ADB, President Asakawa, as well as many bilateral donor countries to initiate as well as to design this recovery fund for not only ASEAN, but also the world. Let us talk about how we are going to design the transition toward low carbon or even net zero emission for all of us. For many developing and emerging countries, we definitely need to design a just and affordable transition. We can always have an idea and goals, but if it is not affordable, then we cannot achieve that goal. Just mean also that it can be bear the burden evenly, or in this case, differently across the across country as well as within country, in which you have a population with a different purchasing power. Indonesia, in this case, part of the ASEAN country. Within the ASEAN, we've already initiated ASEAN Disaster Risk Financing, which also creating a mechanism for the ASEAN country to be able to address the issue of natural disaster risk, and especially when they are hard hit, and how they are going to be able to recover. That's including insurance. We also have within the financial sector and capital market, which is previously also mentioned as a very important institution and sector to facilitate the financing. Financial sector regulator is already within ASEAN developing a taxonomy. That is how we are going to map the risk and source of financing on a sustainable level. Indonesia, as a member of ASEAN country, is also committed for this climate change agenda. Currently, the government has already updated our nationally determined contribution with a long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience by 2050. That's including, most importantly, which my colleague Minister of Energy is going to talk about, the energy transition mechanism. We talk a lot about coal just in the past few days. I was in Rome for the G20, and now today, I think everybody talking about coal. And Indonesia is among the biggest also within our own power mix now, the coal, around 65%, as well as we are also a producer of coal. So for us, this is a commitment which definitely have huge implication fiscally and financially. Without a credible design, it will be impossible for us to do the transition to a lower energy. And that's why the issue of just and affordable is going to be very critical. My colleague minister can announce anything, but the implication on the fiscal side is on my side. And that is very critical for us to bridge this gap between the commitment on the climate and the financing in an affordable way, without actually diluting, or in this case, weakening the ambition. But we really need to be very, very realistic as well as credible in designing this transition. So low carbon transition is definitely not free. It definitely have a huge implication, but we can calculate and we can manage as well as we can financing it. Today's initiative of this Green Recovery Fund, in which the Asean catalytically create a catalytic role by mobilizing funding from both ADB as well as several bilateral institutions, to be able to attract more private sector with the ratio of 1:10. I think this is also quite impressive. We really have to see this would be delivered. And that's why the role of capital market is going to be very critical. And for Indonesia, we are really pleased to hear and to actually learning of this initiative. Indonesia, in order for us to be able to also creating a credible support for this climate change commitment in the NDC, on the fiscal side, we already creating what we call it a comprehensive fiscal framework to support this climate change commitment. And the instrument that we introduced within the fiscal, it could be in the form of taxation, incentive, subsidy for those which is going to be like provided a support, as well as now we are talking about the energy transition mechanism, in which we are requiring to have a pool of fund for retiring coal earlier and substituting of producing a more renewable energy, which definitely require a huge capital. Many of the renewable energy requiring a front-load capital spending, which is significant, and that definitely a challenge that need to be overcome. We also, in this case, providing many of what you call it instrument like issuing bonds, green bonds, which is actually issued in London already, some of it, which is also hopefully can create a financing instrument which is credible enough linking to the commitment of the climate change. This is still a very early. Indonesia since 2018 to 2021 issued $3.5 billion green bond. But I just want to share you here that the price that we have to pay for these bonds is not actually much more competitive than the regular bond. Meaning on the capital market, they don't appreciate the green color in our bonds. That needs something to be continue advocating, because then you are not really seeing the commitment which can be translated into a real price and yield on the bonds. I do hope now with the commitment of many financial institutions that we're creating much huge and the depth of the source of bonds financing on the green level that will then creating a much more competitive price as well as yield. So in this case, Indonesia also is going to host or to become a president of the G20 meeting starting this December. And climate change, including climate finance, is going to be one of the most important priority policy issue. Financing, definitely also very critical. As also my role as a co-chair for the Coalition of Finance Minister for Climate Finance, globally, more than 68 countries already within this coalition. This is going to be one of also the most important task force. So this ASEAN Catalytic Green Climate Fund definitely will create one set of example, concrete example, how this financing of the green commitment can be delivered. With every dollar from the public fund, you can attract more than $7 from the private fund. That definitely will increase the availability of financing, which is definitely required for the climate change commitment. In short, I would like to also congratulate and welcome this ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, and we do hope that this can also encourage even more many facilities that can be created that also link the private sector pool of fund, $1 trillion over there, that can then finance our global commitment to avoid the climate change calamity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ibani, for the very thoughtful perspectives as always. And we will be seeking your advice as we go through with the implementation, particularly on the leveraging aspects that you mentioned. Now let me request our co-host, the Executive Director for the Green Climate Fund, Mr. Jannik Glomeric. Please, let me give you the...
Many thanks. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, good afternoon. It's really great to have you here in our pavilion. The COVID-19 pandemic brought us to either a tipping point or a turning point in our fight against climate change. The way we are to design and implement the economic stimulus measures to recover from the pandemic will either entrench our dependence on fossil fuel, as we did in 2009, or will enable us to accelerate efforts toward low-emission, climate-resilient development. The latest UNEP report on the emission gap basically says that we are not on track to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. We are right now on a trajectory of up to 3 degrees Celsius. According to some estimates, if we could green the economic stimulus measures that have been designed and are to be designed to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we could get back on track to achieve the Paris Agreement's goal. And so it's maybe the greatest opportunity or the greatest risk that humanity is facing right now. Are we or not to be able to green our economic stimulus measures? We have at least 2 challenges to do so. The first one is to ensure that the economic stimulus measures are green and climate resilient. According again to UNEP, less than a fifth of all the economic stimulus measures that are currently known can be considered as green and climate resilient. So there is definitely a lot of work to do in that direction. The second challenge is that why G20 countries have been able to use non-orthodox monetary policies, basically printing money, thanks to an inflation under control, to inject over $15 trillion of liquidity in their economy to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. Most developing countries do not have this capacity. We do not have the fiscal space to print money. A developing country that today will print money will see its interest rate go through the roof. And actually, even without printing money, we have already seen a dramatic increase in interest rate. And so COVID-19 for developing countries is a humanitarian crisis that has become an economic crisis and a debt crisis and a fiscal crisis. And so it's a double challenge if we want to make sure that the economic recovery in Asia is green. And the GCF was extremely concerned about it last year, and so we basically adopted a three-pronged approach. The first prong is that we engage with all our accredited entities, our 113 accredited entities, to look at what we could do to make sure that the pandemic does not affect the delivery of our ongoing portfolio. Because our portfolio is all about energy efficiency, renewable energy, restoration of ecosystems, sustainable agriculture, exactly the type of job-creating activities you want to see in order to recover from the pandemic. So the first thing was that we really wanted to make sure that we will continue injecting liquidity. The second thing that we did is that we used a very flexible facility, a grant facility, to basically provide some technical assistance to countries to craft green economic stimulus measures and explore new financing mechanisms to be able to implement them without increasing their debt burden. And the third one is that we basically send a strong signal to all our partners saying, please help the government you serve to accelerate the preparation of the projects to the Green Climate Fund that will support a green economic recovery. And we were delighted when the governments of Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines, with the assistance of the Asian Development Bank, came to us 3 or 4 months after we had sent this message. It was almost immediately, with basically a very innovative mechanisms in order to promote a green recovery in Southeast Asia. And we definitely very much like this idea of using public money in a catalytic manner to leverage $7 billion of private investment in order to finance 20 priority investment, low emission, climate resilient investment. And I fully agree with you, Minister. If this work, we might have one more model that we could reproduce elsewhere. And I also would like to applaud the initiative of the Asian Development Bank to establish a green recovery platform. For us, de facto, you are establishing a syndicate. What in the private sector would be called a syndicate. And it's exactly what we want. The times of the pilot projects is over. No, we need to be able to move massive amount of finance as fast as possible. By syndicating, we can reach size. And because GCF is capital agnostic and partner agnostic. Capital agnostic, we are financed by taxpayer. Thank you very much, UK, which is the largest financial contributor to the Green Climate Fund. Because we are financed in grant by taxpayers, we can use this grant for anything, for any kind of grant and non-grant instrument. So from grant to extending the tenure of commercial loans, to guarantees, to equities. So for us, we are willing to join a syndication platform and basically take the type of finance that other partners cannot mobilize. And because we are partner agnostic, all in all, we work with more than 200 partners, from the largest commercial banks in the world, MDBs, to UN agencies, civil society organizations working at the community level. We can also normally bring a number of people to the syndication platform. So in a sense, thank you very much and congratulations to the Asian Development Bank for this very innovative approach.
Thank you so much, Executive Director Glomeric, for those words, as well as equally important for your support for us. Now we will hear from Bapak Minister Arifin Tasrif. We've heard finance perspectives, but the most important minister and the important ministry from an implementation point of view for the Asian Development Bank in Indonesia is the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources. So let's hear from Minister Arifin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Excellencies, distinguished participants, thank you for the opportunities. Allow me to say something. Yeah, I'm not a financial man. I have my boss there. I'm only the executor, hard workers. Well, yeah, we know that the global pandemic really impact the economic landscapes. According to the International Energy Association, that during the pandemic, investment in the energy dropped almost 20%. It means they mentioned about $400 billion. So we missed a chance. There is an advantage or and also disadvantage. The advantage one is due to the pandemic, the new project for fossil will stop, cannot be continued. But there is disadvantage that also impacting to the renewable program. In terms of Asean, this crisis must be the opportunities to rearrange energy composition and accelerating greener shares of energy supply through ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. These plans aims to accelerate energy transition and strengthen energy resilience by increasing innovation and cooperation and enhancing targets of renewable energy and energy intensity. As one of the ASEAN members, Indonesia consistently delivers message from Southeast Asian regions, among others. Energy transition acceleration to support economic recovery. Last week, I just attended the Singapore International Energy Weeks. Unfortunately, during those events, we have opportunity to sign 3 memorandum of understanding to supply Singapore with the solar energy electricity for couple gigawatt for next couple of years. So lucky, ASEAN, we have a good cooperation among us. We also have ASEAN Supergrid project, yeah, which is connecting, suppose it's connecting through the island and also from Indonesia to Singapore and Malaysian island. So I think Indonesia, we have a huge potential of renewable energy. In our calculation, we just indicate our potential about 600 gigawatt. But a couple of days ago, when we have a meeting in London, because we joined the Mentari program, we indicate that our wind power resources are much, much bigger than what we predict. So it's really big potential. And then I'm lucky in the last couple of days, I'm having a chance to visit 2 locations of wind power plant. One in Brighton, offshore, and then just yesterday we visit Whiteley, onshore project. So it reflects that the technology will support the acceleration of the transition energy. We have the resources. We have to develop infrastructure, means the transmission system. And then the most important thing is the fund. So green financing is really important for us. Recently, we are just issuing our government procurement plan for the next 10 years, which is dominated by renewable energy. About 22 gigawatt will be used renewable energy coming from several resources. Yeah, as I mentioned to you, we have solar, we have wind, we have geothermal, we have also hydro, and even undercurrent or tidal. We need a proven economic technology in order to allow us to utilize this. This energy not only going to be used in our country, but also we can share to our brother country in ASEAN. And then we need such kind of transmission in order to connect that. Well, we appreciate the ADB for proposing ETM energy transition mechanism to accelerate emission reductions in Indonesia, as well as other Asian member countries. We also have been discussing energy transition mechanism initiated by ADB and considering it suitable to accelerate the decarbonization in Indonesia, particularly for the early retirement of CFPP. In our thought right now, there are about total 9.2 gigawatt of coal-fired power plant then that can be retired before 2030. We divide into two steps, half of each. And of course, we are proceeding this with the support from ADB, of course, with the strong support from Ibu Sri Mulyani. And beside that, we also preparing government regulation regarding the tariff of the renewable energy. So the new regulation, we expect it can be attractive for the investor to come, in order to allow us to execute our renewable energy program. Well, energy transitions requires numerous green projects for significantly enhancing renewable shares, energy efficiency activities, and sustainable infrastructures. Without adequate green finance, maybe we cannot turn out plans into action for achieving our enhanced NDC targets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Excellency Minister, for those perspectives, and we look forward to working with you very, very closely. I seek your understanding. We have a second part of the program. We will hear two video messages, first from the European Union, followed by a minister from Singapore. I'm also very glad to share with you that the Chief Executive Officer of AFD, very important partner for ADB, Mr. Remy Rio, is also with us. So we will play the video now for the EU message, followed by Singapore. Then I'll request Mr. Remy Rio to speak. Then we will have two more videos after that, including from the ASEAN Secretariat. Please. I understand Mr. Glomeric has to leave for another meeting. Thank you so much.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. One of the greatest scientists ever, Albert Einstein, once said the following: look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better. The thing about nature is that it has certain immutable laws. Gravity, motion, thermodynamics, try as we may, we cannot alter those laws of the universe. But what we can do is alter our response to them. And that's what COP26 is all about. The current rates of global warming threaten our very future. Even the economic slowdown triggered by COVID-19 has made almost no discernible impact on carbon emissions this past year. What the pandemic did do was to create an unprecedented opportunity for the world to join forces to build a greener, fairer, and more sustainable planet. Southeast Asia plays a crucial role in that mission. The ASEAN region is among the most vulnerable in the world to the impact of climate change. And at the same time, its greenhouse gas emissions are steeply increasing year by year. The pandemic has only made matters worse. Today, Southeast Asian countries are embarking on a green recovery, and the EU stands ready to support. The European Union recently pledged an additional 4 billion to combat climate change, and 35% of our external action budget will be devoted to achieving climate change objectives. Together with our member states, we are proud to contribute 783 million euros to the ASEAN catalytic green finance facility, including 50 million directly from the EU and around 150 million euros from the European Investment Bank. The ASEAN Catalytic Green Facility represents just the kind of innovation we need to meet the challenges before us. By bringing together the public and private sectors, it will catalyze 7 billion euros of green infrastructure across Southeast Asia. The EU and ASEAN became strategic partners in 2020, and we are proud to work together on this endeavor. If we are to combat climate change, we need to rethink our approach to infrastructure development in the context of a rapidly warming planet. We also need to rethink our approach to finance, and that's why the EU is developing a comprehensive sustainable finance strategy, which we expect to adopt towards the second half of 2022. It will assist low and middle-income countries with scaling up sustainable finance by taking advantage of all the tools at our disposal, including blended finance. At this critical juncture, I would like to urge all partners, both public and private, to mobilize funds towards green, sustainable investments. We have the means to achieve a green recovery. We simply need to use them. On that note, let me leave you with a quote from one of history's other greatest scientists, Thomas Edison. He said, "Invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." Colleagues, we have our inspiration. Now it's time to get to work. Together, let's achieve a successful outcome at COP26. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
International Partnerships at the European Commission. We will next hear a video message from Mr. Grace Fu, Minister for Sustainability and the Environment from Singapore.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the ADB for the invitation, as well as the UK government and the Green Climate Fund for co-hosting this event. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has warned that without a rapid and drastic reduction in emissions, global temperature will rise above 2 degrees C in this century. The window of opportunity for us to avert irreversible damage is narrowing. Countries need to take substantive action to deliver on nationally determined contributions and work towards net zero goals. Many of the decisions we take today will have long-term implications on the trajectory of our emissions. Sustainability must therefore be at the heart of national COVID-19 economic recovery strategies. We also need to be ready for the impact of climate change. Sea level rise and extreme weather events pose an existential challenge to many countries, particularly to the over 400 million people living in low-lying coastal areas of Southeast Asia. Massive investment is needed to transit to a low-carbon and climate-resilient future. The ADB noted that Asia needs to invest US $1.7 trillion per year in infrastructure through 2030 for energy transition, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and inclusive growth. Green financing plays a crucial role to channel much-needed resources to meet this demand. Today, Singapore is ASEAN's largest market for green bonds and loans, accounting for about half the market. We are pushing ahead to develop a vibrant green financing ecosystem to support Asia's sustainable transition. For example, we will invest $1.8 billion into climate-related investment opportunities. We aim to work with the financial industry to build reliable data platforms to better monitor and mobilize capital for green projects. We are setting our roadmaps for mandatory climate-related financial disclosures, starting with sectors most exposed to climate-related risks. We're helping to build capability and skill sets in the region. Given the scale and complexity of the challenge, countries cannot fight climate change alone. Multi-stakeholder partnerships are key. we must work alongside multilateral development banks and regional partners to harness the power of finance to promote cleaner and greener forms of energy and activities that will benefit communities in Asia and beyond. We welcome ADB's initiatives such as the ASEAN Green Recovery Platform and ADB's ambition of delivering US $100 billion in cumulative climate financing to developing member countries between 2019 to 2030. Singapore is glad to partner ADB in financing initiatives. Temasek, HSBC, and Clifford Capital Holdings have partnered ADB to establish a debt financing platform to support marginally bankable projects. This platform aims to boost development of sustainable infrastructure projects with focus on Southeast Asia in areas such as clean transport, renewable energy, and energy storage. With 65% of Asia's projects facing bankability issues, the platform hopes to accelerate countries' sustainable development. Climate adaptation will be one focus area later. Infrastructure Asia is another homegrown institution partnering ADB. Formed in 2018 to advance the flow of private capital and expertise into Asia to support infrastructure development, the agency works with the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility to originate climate projects, improve bankability, and matching with investors. Green financing is key to bridging Asia's infrastructure gap and to achieve a green recovery. At this critical global juncture, we must mobilize capital for sustainability and to ensure that our future does not lie in the climate crisis, but in a livable planet. Thank you.
Pleasure of requesting Mr. Remy Rio, the CEO of AFD, please.
Good afternoon. I want to thank President Asakawa and Dirmasa for the invitation. And it's a great honor to be on this stage with you, ministers, and have the opportunity to express our admiration and commend the work, the ambition, the commitment made by ASEAN and its member state in this, multifaceted crisis we are all facing worldwide. And we all know that on many issues, ASEAN countries are at the forefront of this fight. And so we have a lot to learn. We have to invest in the experience of your region to accompany your efforts, but also to learn from the solutions that will happen, that will be invented in your countries. And AFD, on behalf of France, of course, as part of Team Europe, we are extremely proud to partner with the Asian Development Bank and to partner with your region. It makes 25 years for us. We started, we did a lot on climate. We started on mitigation with the energy sector. Ministers was referring to with these high challenges we are facing. Then we turned to urban transportation, urban planning, and we are now turning to adaptation, and also because it's the same and single issue to biodiversity protection. We have to link climate finance and biodiversity finance. We even pledged that for AFD, 30% of our climate finance will be nature positive by 2025. And so we have invested about 3 billion for the last 5 years in the region, 40% of which being climate finance, and 20% of it in cooperation with ADB, which is our historic and strategic partner. We also commend the creation of this green recovery platform. I think, as Jannik was saying, We all know that we are not doing enough in mobilizing private finance. The figures are very clear. When you look, this is the missing part in the 100 billion, actually. And so I heard the leaders yesterday pushing all of us to do more. We have, yes, pilots. We are doing small things, but we have to do it now at scale. And it's very important that each region invents its own mechanism so that, yes, we can replicate them. So we are very happy to be part of the Catalytic Green Finance Facility as part of this platform, and we certainly will learn a lot from that on the project side, but also, Minister, you were referring to taxonomies. It's very important also that each region originates taxonomy, that these taxonomies should be consistent. Globally, there are about 200 around for now. And so we have to streamline, merge, and find a common language. Why not from your experience? And I think this platform is also a very clear and powerful example of what public development banks can do. Not for themselves, not by themselves, but as a key part of the financial system. It starts with multilateral development banks, of course, because you have the legitimacy, you have the financial firepower, and you have the possibility to do the research and to create common instruments. But I really plea for the scheme to also embark all the public development banks, including sub-regional, national development banks. Maybe you know I'm also the head of a club called IDFC, International Development Finance Club. We have PTSMI as a member of the club, very active, very positive. And there are so many public development banks in the Asian regions. So we created last year a movement called Finance in Common with our multilateral partners, with the very simple idea to gather all of us. We did the research with the University of Peking. There are 530 public development banks in the world, in each and every country. When you add all the financial capacities of these institutions, it amounts to $2.5 trillion each year, following the government's guidance. And so we collectively are building some sort of global architecture, and we were extremely proud that the G20 finance ministers meeting in October recognized the Finance in Common movement, and we certainly intend, Minister, next year for the Indonesian G20 presidency to report on the progress made and to do way more. Because imagine that these 2.5 trillions were fully aligned with the Paris Agreement. With the capacity of these institutions so deeply rooted in their constituency to mobilize also other public actors, to mobilize the private sector as President Asakawa is doing right now, then we will have an answer that is at scale with the ambition of COP26. And we could demonstrate that the commitments made by the government, so strong, especially in your region, are landing to the ground in very concrete projects for the transition. So at your disposal, of course, to pursue. And this is what AFD, with all colleagues, we are doing here in Glasgow. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Rio, for those remarks. We've come to the last part of the program. Kindly bear with us. We have two short video messages. First from Mr. Dario Scannapieco, CEO of the Italian CDP, then followed by the Honorable Satvinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General of the Asean Secretariat.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank the Asian Development Bank for organizing this event and the GCF, GEF for hosting us in their COP26 pavilion. I am pleased and honored to intervene today and announce the support of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti to the Asian Catalytic Green Finance Facility. This marks the start of an important partnership among our institution and the ADB. We believe that the facility represents an innovative and effective initiative to concretely accelerate the achievement of environmental and climate objectives. The facility aims to overcome barriers to the development of green infrastructure through the mobilization of public and private resources for long-term investments. Such objectives are deeply rooted in the CDP business model. In its role of national promotional institution and financial institution for development cooperation, CDP acts as a long-term investor with a public mandate to provide patient capital to the real economy. In doing so, we focus on the long-term impact of our activities and place the cooperation with international partners at the center of our strategy. In 170 years of history, CDP has consolidated a unique role in the Italian economy with a growing international perspective. CDP supports sustainable growth and puts the development of strategic infrastructures for more inclusive and resilient territories at the core of its action. 2021-2030 is the critical decade for climate and environment. We must reduce emissions by 50% this decade in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels by the end of this century, combat environmental degradation and halt catastrophic biodiversity losses. To achieve this, significant investment is required in projects that contribute substantially to climate action and environmental sustainability, rather than in those with negative impacts. This managed transition to a new green economy must be conducted in a socially inclusive manner, creating opportunities and offering support to ensure that no one is left behind. Several developing countries have voiced that they would not commit to a higher climate target at COP26 unless they receive more international support, notably with regard to climate finance. And we all know that public resources alone appear to be largely insufficient. One way to cope with this would be to involve the EU and foreign governments and donors, the MDBs and the private sector to come up with multilateral initiatives in order to help the regions that are lagging behind in the climate ambition to adapt and prepare for the future. In this perspective, we believe that the partnership of CDP with ADB and the facility represents a step forward in this direction. By supporting infrastructure projects with significant impact in terms of greenhouse gases emission reduction, the facility will be central to achieve a broad spectrum of SDGs in the Asian countries. By joining the facility today with an initial investment of up to 130 million, CDP is honored to play its part in the process. The participation of CDP in the facility is possible thanks to the first joint intervention of all the actors in the Italian cooperation system: the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Ecological Transition, and the Italian Agency for Development and Cooperation. In particular, thanks to the support of the Italian Ministry of Ecological Transition, CDP will be able to provide technical assistance to support the Asian governments to plan and develop green infrastructure projects, as well as to enhance the quality of projects. This, we believe, will contribute to attract finance from impact-minded market investors. As confirmed by the success of the Finance in Common Summit recently hosted by us in Rome, partnership represents the way forward to mobilize increasing volumes of good finance for the SDGs. In this perspective, CDP stands ready to play an active role in financing sustainable and inclusive infrastructure by promoting constructive partnership with the ADB and ASEAN partners and in joining forces with other public development banks to tackle today's challenge for both this and the next generation. Thank you all for your attention and wish you a fruitful afternoon of discussion. Many thanks.
The President of the Asian Development Bank, Mr. Asakawa, Your Excellencies, Ministers of the ASEAN Member States, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is with deep honor and privilege for the ASEAN Secretariat to address all of you distinguished participants. I'm extremely pleased to be part of this discussion that's aiming to chart the future of our region in the path to greener recovery, and more precisely, charting a future of a lower carbon region and the hope for a better climate resiliency in Southeast Asia. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the ASEAN recovery efforts are guided by the recently adopted ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which seeks to build a much stronger and a much resilient region in the post-COVID-19 era. Specifically, the broad Strategy 5, which is the advancement towards a more sustainable and resilient future, it has actually outlined specific targets and priorities to pursue a much more inclusive and a climate-responsive approach to recovery and support the region's transition to a circular economy. Now, it is for this reason that we find today's discussion extremely timely and relevant to the needs of the ASEAN region. Now, paving the way to establishing an ASEAN Green Recovery Platform to support a much more greener infrastructure in the region is indeed a welcome development. Greener investments and technologies are certainly needed to support the ASEAN's climate transition. The proposed ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility to be managed by ADB, I believe, is definitely going to help the ASEAN member states in further promoting environmental sustainability and contribute in achieving our ambitious climate goals. We look forward to supporting and working with ADB in actively identifying deserving qualifiable projects and initiatives for this facility. Ladies and gentlemen, the continuous efforts towards a just and sustainable climate transition has been made by many of the ASEAN member states. The ASEAN Secretariat, through the ASEAN Social Cultural Community Pillar, has also made significant strides in sort of strengthening the collaborative climate actions in the region. For instance, ASEAN is basically on its way to develop the ASEAN Climate Finance Strategy in collaboration with the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center to enhance and to catalyze the ASEAN member states' access to climate finance and investment to sort of implement priority mitigation and adaptation actions. The initial assessments have shown that all of the ASEAN member states, they need support to cope with climate risks and to establish climate resilient development schemes and to sort of achieve some of the local mitigation and the NDC targets. The volume of climate finance needed for the region as determined by the NDCs is estimated around USD $422 billion, moving up from now to 2030. Similarly, the ASEAN member states have also emphasized the need for a stronger climate finance support to address technological, institutional, and capacity building needs, not only on climate change, but also for green recovery. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at this year's COP26, I'm proud to inform you that ASEAN will deliver the ASEAN Joint Statement on Climate Change, articulating the ASEAN member states' common views and concerns towards a global solution to climate change and their resolve towards climate resiliency. The strong political will and commitment is critical in achieving our ambitious climate targets. This joint statement also kind of underscores the significance of the ASEAN taxonomy for sustainable finance to further mobilize climate finance and support the local mitigation and adaptation actions in a much more coherent and concrete manner. ASEAN is strongly committed to address this major challenge with the support of all of our valuable partners. I wish to recognize the Asian Development Bank for its commitment and its efforts to keep this as a matter of priority and in continuously supporting the ASEAN member states and our region. I'm extremely confident that our strong relationship has built a strong foundation that's going to help us to shift towards a decarbonized economy beyond COP26. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, the stronger political will, the closer cooperation, the heightened political awareness, these are all important solutions to the serious problems we are confronted with. I believe that our discussions today are going to provide a pronounced opportunity for us to establish stronger bonds and identify very innovative ideas for further collaboration. Moving forward, our region actually needs coordinated actions to restore our growth and stability with a much more focus on climate challenges. And on this note, the ASEAN region actually truly looks forward to a further strengthened cooperation with ADB and all of the ASEAN partners, including the fostering of stronger public-private partnerships in order to access funds and also to catalyze deep technical assistance that's needed to support us in our green recovery, and of course helping us to achieve a much more cleaner and a lot more climate resilient ASEAN region. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Minister Srimulyani, Minister Arifin, Mr. Rio, as well as President Asakawa, and Minister Cleverly, and the Executive Director of Green Climate Fund, and the others who spoke. So thank you all for joining. Now we are on to implementation, 90% perspiration. And as Sibu Srimulyani said, there is a lot that needs to be done to leverage. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to request those on stage, as well as VP Saeed, for a quick photo, and then we will conclude. Thank you.